He laughed at her pain. A desperate young woman stood in the Atlanta police station, begging for help. Her brother had been missing for 3 days. The officer leaned back in his chair, smirked, and said, "He probably just ran off." But hours later, that same officer opened his locker and froze. Inside, taped to the cold metal door, was a missing person's ID. The same boy he laughed about. The same name he'd written on the dismissal report. Only this time, the boy's eyes in the photo looked different, like they were staring right at him. What happened when the officer who mocks a grieving sister becomes the center of the same missing case? What if the truth isn't buried in the woods, but locked inside his own conscience? In Atlanta, a city where silence protects power, one mistake will unravel everything. A badge will fall, a mother will break, and a secret, hidden in the cold metal of a locker, will expose a crime no one saw coming. Because sometimes the monster doesn't wear a mask. He wears a uniform. Subscribe, like and comment. Let's hear from you. It started with laughter. Not the good kind, not joy or relief, but that hollow, echoing laugh that fills a quiet room right before something breaks. Officer Mark Delaney leaned back in his chair, half a sandwich still in his hand, when the kid walked in. The boy's clothes were damp from rain, his sneakers squeaking against the tile. His voice trembled when he spoke. "My brother's missing," he said. "He didn't come home last night." Delaney didn't look up right away. He chewed, swallowed, wiped his fingers on a napkin. Then he chuckled. "Kid," he said, "it's Atlanta. Everybody's brother goes missing at least once." The boy didn't smile. His hands gripped the counter like he was holding onto the last bit of ground under him. "He always comes home," he said. "Always." Delaney sighed, finally turning toward him. The kid couldn't have been more than 17. Wide eyes, dark skin glistening with rain. His name, scribbled on a torn piece of paper, said Jalen Carter. "All right, Jalen," Delaney said, tapping his pen lazily. "Tell me when you last saw him." "Yesterday, around 9. He said he was going to walk to the store. He never came back. Maybe he crashed with a friend. He doesn't have many friends." Delaney leaned back again, watching the boy's face. The panic, the exhaustion, the sincerity. Still, he didn't believe him. Not really. He'd heard too many stories, too many exaggerations. Another runaway, another argument at home, another case that would file itself. "Look, I'll make a note," Delaney muttered. "If he doesn't show by tomorrow, we'll check." The boy slammed his hand on the counter. Tomorrow might be too late. The station went silent. Rain pattered against the glass. Even the ceiling fan seemed to stop spinning for a moment. Delaney frowned, annoyed. "What's your tone?" Jalen's eyes were wet, but his voice stayed steady. "You don't care, do you?" That hit harder than he expected. For a split second, something flickered across Delaney's face. Something uncertain, human, but it vanished just as fast. He picked up his coffee and took a slow sip. "Go home. Kid," he said, "your brother's probably fine." When Jalen finally left, the room felt colder. That was the last normal moment Officer Mark Delaney would ever have. Because 2 nights later, when he opened his locker, something fell out, a thin leather wallet. He almost ignored it, probably one of the rookies messing around. But where he picked it up and flipped it open, his blood froze. Inside was an ID. Isaiah Carter, age 22. The photo matched the missing brother's name from that night. The same last name. The same kid Jalen had begged him to look for. Delaney stared at it, his pulse pounding in his ears. The sound of the locker door slamming echoed through the room. For the first time in years, the confident officer didn't feel in control. He looked around. No one in sight. The locker room was empty, lights buzzing overhead. But the wallet, it wasn't dirty. It wasn't dropped from evidence. It looked placed. He flipped through it again. A few crumpled bills, a gas receipt, and one photo tucked behind the ID. Isaiah smiling, arm wrapped around Jalen. Delaney's hands trembled. That's when the memory hit him. The rain that night. The body call near Peachtree Creek. The report he'd skimmed and ignored. A John Doe, unidentified. Dark hoodie, age range early 20s. They'd sent the body to the morgue without much follow-up. He swallowed hard. No, it couldn't be the same kid. But something deep inside told him it was. That night, Delaney couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling of his small apartment, replaying every second of that conversation with Jalen. You don't care, do you? The words echoed in his skull like a curse. He thought about calling it in, turning the wallet over, writing an incident report. But that would mean explaining how it ended up in his locker. He hadn't touched that evidence room in days. So how did it get there? Was someone setting him up? Or worse, had he been there, that night by the creek, and just didn't remember? He sat up, sweating. The city outside buzzed with sirens and thunder. Atlanta never slept, but tonight it felt like the whole world was holding its breath. By morning, the missing persons report was on the front desk. Someone else had filed it. Detective Alicia Monroe had taken over. Delaney didn't know her well, but everyone in the precinct respected her. Sharp mind, calm under pressure. The kind of detective who saw through lies before they finished leaving your mouth. When she walked into the bullpen that day, her trench coat still wet from the rain, Delaney's stomach tightened. She gave him a polite nod. "Officer Delaney," she said, "you were the one who took the initial report." "Yeah," he said carefully. The brother came in, Jalen Carter. "Do you remember what he said?" He hesitated, said his brother didn't come home, thought it was just another misunderstanding. Her eyes lingered on him a moment too long. "You laughed when he told you." He blinked. "Excuse me. I asked if you laughed." He forced a chuckle. "No. Why would I?" But she didn't smile. "I like to check attitudes," she said simply. "They usually point me toward the truth." Delaney swallowed hard. By noon, Detective Monroe was already piecing things together. Security footage from the corner store showed Isaiah Carter leaving at 9:12 p.m. Then, nothing. No street cams. No witnesses. It was like he vanished between one block and the next. Jalen came by again that afternoon, standing in the corner of the station like he didn't trust anyone anymore. His voice was small when he spoke to Monroe. "Do you think he's dead?" Monroe didn't answer. "We'll find out," she said gently. "But I need you to tell me everything. Any fights? Anyone who wanted to hurt him?" Jalen shook his head. He didn't mess with people. He worked late shifts at the mechanic shop. He was saving for school. Delaney listened from his desk, pretending to type, but every word stabbed at him. When the boy glanced his way, Delaney looked down fast. He couldn't meet those eyes again. That evening, when the precinct emptied out, Delaney walked back to the locker room. The wallet was gone. He froze. The shelf was empty. Panic surged through his chest. Someone had been here. Someone new. He toned, scanning the lockers, the metal echo of his footsteps bouncing off the walls. And then he saw it, a faint smear of dirt near his own locker door, shaped like a partial handprint. He backed away slowly, heart thudding. Then a voice behind him. "You look like you've seen a ghost. Delaney." It was Sergeant Pierce, leaning in the doorway, smirking. Delaney forced a breath. "Just tired." Pierce raised an eyebrow. "You sure? You've been jumpy since that Carter kid came in." Delaney didn't answer. He grabbed his jacket and left. But outside, as the rain started again, he realized something that made his stomach twist. He'd never told anyone about the wallet. So how did Pierce know? Blunt force trauma. The kind that comes from a nightstick. Monroe stared at the photo. The kind of weapon every cop carried. Meanwhile, Delaney couldn't guess. Hate the memories flooding back. He went home and poured a drink, his hands trembling. He could see Isaiah's face now, not clearly, but enough. The fear, the moment he toned, the moment Delaney lunged without thinking. It had been chaos, a patrol gone wrong. They were responding to a call about a break-in near Auburn Avenue, a suspect fleeing through the woods. The boy matched a vague description. Isaiah had tried to run, shouting something about "my brother." Delaney never listened. He just followed orders. Pierce was shouting, "Get him down!" Then came the crack of wood against skull, and silence. Delaney's stomach churned. He didn't remember pulling the trigger, didn't remember the hit landing. Just the stillness afterward, the weight of what he'd done. Then the rain started, washing everything away. Pierce must have covered it up, must have dragged the body to the creek. filed it as an unknown. And when Delaney started remembering, when he began asking questions, Pierce planted the wallet in his locker, a warning to stay quiet. The next day, Detective Monroe asked Delaney to step into her office. He tried to act calm, but sweat ran down his neck. She motioned for him to sit. "You went back to the creek last night," she said. Not a question, a statement. His throat tightened. "I just wanted to help. Thought I might have missed something." She studied him. Her eyes didn't blink much. "You've been an officer here 8 years, right?" He drove home fast, windshield wipers scraping across the glass. The city blurred past, neon signs, wet pavement, the smell of exhaust and thunder. When he parked, he sat in silence for a long time, staring at his reflection in the rearview mirror. He looked older suddenly. Pale. Hello. That's when he saw it. On the passenger seat. The photo. The same one from Isaiah's wallet. Isaiah and Jalen smiling in front of a red brick house. He didn't remember bringing it home. Delaney picked it up slowly. On the back, scrawled in black ink, were 4 words. "You were there, Mark." He dropped it, heart hammering. He looked around. The windows, the dark street, the shadows behind the fence. Was someone watching him? Or was the guilt finally crawling out from wherever he'd buried it? Thunder rolled across the city like a warning. Inside the car, Officer Mark Delaney whispered to himself, voice shaking, "What did I do?" The photo trembled in his hand, and outside, under the streetlight, a figure stood just beyond the rain, watching. Rain never really stops in Atlanta. It just hides for a while, waiting for the right moment to fall again. Detective Alicia Monroe stood at the edge of Peachtree Creek, her boots sinking slightly into the mud. The water moved slow, dark, and heavy, swollen from days of storms. Beside her, the coroner's team zipped up a black body bag. She didn't need to open it. She already knew what they'd find. Male, early 20s, dark skin, torn hoodie, no ID, possible match to the Carter case, one of the techs said. Monroe nodded, but her eyes stayed on the water. "I want every inch of that bank searched," she said. "Someone left him here, and they thought the rain would wash him away." Her partner scribbled notes behind her. "You think it's random?" Monroe looked up at the gray sky. "In Atlanta," she said softly, "nothing's random." That same morning, Officer Mark Delaney sat alone in his car again. The photo, the one that said you were there, Mark, lay on the dashboard. He'd stared at it all night. He'd turned it over again and again, hoping the handwriting would somehow change. But it didn't. Those 4 words stayed burned into his mind. He hadn't told anyone. Couldn't. The precinct already felt colder since Detective Monroe arrived. She moved through the halls like she could smell guilt. Every time she passed him, he felt his chest tighten, like she was reading the truth off his face. He needed answers, so he did something stupid, something that would only drag him deeper. He went back to the creek. The road out there was almost empty, a forgotten stretch of asphalt behind a warehouse district. He parked by the fence, rain misting through the trees. The water below whispered softly against the rocks. Delaney walked down the embankment, his flashlight cutting through the fog. He remembered this place. Too well. A memory flickered, faint and broken, blue lights flashing, radio chatter, the smell of metal and blood. He'd been here before, that night, but why couldn't he remember everything? He crouched by the water's edge, the beam of light glinting off something half buried in the mud, a shoe. Torn, soaked, size too small for a grown man. He picked it up and turned it over. Underneath the sole, half smeared by mud, was a name written in black marker. Isaiah. Delaney froze. The creek went quiet, the rain softening until the only sound left was his heartbeat. He dropped the shoe and stumbled back. This wasn't a setup anymore. This was memory clawing its way back. He saw it now. Flashes. Isaiah running. Delaney shouting after him. Pierce's voice somewhere behind him. "Just stop the kid." A scuffle. A fall. Then silence. The flashlight hit something metallic, the edge of a badge, glinting from under the mud. But not his. He brushed the dirt away, and the light revealed a faint engraving, Sergeant J. Pierce. Delaney's mouth went dry. his superior officer's badge. Left behind here? That meant only one thing. Pierce had been here too. Back at the precinct, Detective Monroe examined the case board. Photos lined the wall. Isaiah Carter, his brother Jalen, the creek site, and now a new image, a muddy badge. Forensics had found it just hours after Delaney left. He didn't know they were still processing the scene when he returned. Cameras had caught him there, silhouette blurred by fog but recognizable enough. Monroe studied the frame. The timing didn't make sense. Why would a responding officer go back to a crime scene alone? Her phone buzzed. The coroner. The autopsy confirmed what she already suspected. Isaiah Carter hadn't drowned. He'd been struck hard behind the ear. 10. Then you know better than to contaminate a scene. Delaney forced a smile. Old habits. She slid a photo across the desk. It was Isaiah Carter. Dead. Autopsy says blunt trauma, Monroe said quietly. No water in the lungs. Which means he was gone before he hit the creek. Delaney's hands clenched under the table. You think someone killed him? I think someone panicked, she said. And someone else cleaned it up. Their eyes met. Her calm is cracking. Then she added, you ever work with Sergeant Pierce on field calls? He hesitated. Sometimes. Good, she said, because I think he's hiding something. And if you help me, we can find out what. Delaney swallowed hard. What makes you think I can help? Because, she said, leaning forward, you look like a man who's already seen the truth. That night, Jalen stood outside the precinct, waiting for Monroe to finish her shift. When she stepped out, he held up a small box. My brother's stuff, he said. Found it under his bed. She opened it. An old notebook, some photos, and a small flash drive. He used to film everything, Jalen whispered. Said one day he'd make a documentary about police in Atlanta. He didn't trust them. Monroe nodded, pocketing the drive. I'll handle this carefully, she promised. As she turned to leave, Jalen stopped her. Detective, he said softly, you think they'll really find who did it? She looked at him, saw the hope fighting the grief. And she lied. Yes. Back home, Delaney sat in the dark, the rain outside pounding against the windows. He thought about turning himself in, about ending the nightmare, but fear clamped down harder. Pierce had connections. He could make anything disappear. And if Delaney spoke, if he said what really happened, he'd go down too. His phone buzzed. A message. No number. You keep quiet, or your brother's next. He froze. He didn't have a brother, but Pierce did. A brother who ran a private security firm, the kind that handled cleanups. Delaney's heart dropped. Pierce wasn't warning him. He was threatening Jalen. At midnight, Monroe plugged a flash drive into her laptop. Static, then a flicker of video, shaky footage of a police cruiser. Isaiah's voice came through, muffled by rain. Officer said we matched the call, but we didn't do nothing. They are coming now. The video cut off. The timestamp, 10:17 p.m., the night Isaiah disappeared. Monroe stared at the frozen frame, a reflection in the window of the cruiser. Two men, one clearly Sergeant Pierce, the other, just out of focus, looked like Delaney. Somewhere across the city, Delaney sat in his car by the creek again, engine off, headlights cutting into the mist. He stared at the water, gripping his badge. His hand shook as he whispered, I didn't mean to. Behind him, tires crunched on gravel. A pair of headlights approached. Pierce stepped out, raincoat glistening, smirk already forming. You shouldn't be here, Mark. Delaney toned. What did we do? Pierce's smile faded. Where? You hit him. I just made sure it didn't ruin your life. Delaney shook his head. He was just a kid. So were half the people on those streets. Pierce said coldly. We clean up messes. That's our job. Delaney looked at him, eyes wet. And what happens when the mess is us? Pierce stepped closer, his voice low. Then we bury it deeper. Thunder cracked overhead. Delaney backed away toward the water. I can't live like this. You will, Pierce said, because you don't have a choice. For a moment, Neither spoke. Just rain. Just guilt. Just ghosts. Then Monroe's voice echoed from the hill. "Drop your weapon, Sergeant." Both men spun, flashlights flooding the clearing. Officers emerged behind her, guns drawn. Pierce snarled, "You shouldn't have come here, Detective." Monroe's eyes hardened. "You shouldn't have left your badge behind." For a second, time stopped. Then, a gunshot. Screams. Water splashing. When the shot rang out, the world stopped breathing. Detective Alicia Monroe's ears rang with silence, sharp and hollow. Rain blurred the edges of everything. The trees, the creek, even the faces around her. One figure floated face down in the water, the other on his knees, shaking, gun still trembling in his hand. "Drop it, Delaney!" someone shouted. He didn't move. His lips quivered as he stared at the creek, where Sergeant Pierce's body drifted toward the rocks. The current pulled him slowly away, like the city itself was swallowing another secret. Monroe moved closer, gun steady. "Mark," she said softly, "put the weapon down." He didn't fight. He didn't speak. He just let it slip from his hand, falling into the mud with a dull thud. And as the cuffs clicked around his wrists, he whispered only one thing. "I didn't mean to kill him." Hours later, the precinct was alive again. Reporters gathered outside, their lights flashing against the wet pavement. "Sergeant shot by fellow officer." The headlines wrote themselves before the truth even reached the chief's desk. Inside, Monroe sat alone in the interrogation room, staring at the body cam footage. It showed chaos, shouting, confusion, rain distorting the lens. Then a flash of light, the gunshot, and the sound of someone gasping before the feed went black. She replayed it 3 times. The angle didn't show who fired first, but it did catch one thing, Pierce's last words. "You'll never prove anything, Alicia." She leaned back, heart heavy. Even in death, he was still in control. Delaney sat in a holding cell downstairs, drenched, eyes hollow. He hadn't asked for a lawyer, hadn't spoken since they brought him in. The once confident officer now looked like a man carved out of guilt. When Monroe entered, he barely looked up. "You want to tell me what happened?" she asked. He rubbed his wrist where the cuffs had been. He reached for his gun. "And you shot him. He would have killed me. Or he would have told me the truth." Delaney's jaw tightened. "You think you can handle the truth, Detective?" Monroe met his gaze. "Try me." He exhaled slowly, eyes wet. "Pierce killed Isaiah, but I was there. I didn't stop him. I froze. And when it was over, he said we'd fix it, make it look like a mistake. Said no one would ever know." She studied him carefully. "And you believed him?" He nodded, shame flooding his voice. "I wanted to. I wanted to forget." She leaned closer. "But the boy's wallet, the photo, why put them in your locker?" He blinked, startled. "You think I did that? Who else could have?" Delaney swallowed hard. "Pierce wanted to break me. Make me his insurance policy. If it ever came out, it'd look like I did it alone." Monroe's eyes darkened. She'd seen this before. Good men turned into shields by the corrupt ones above them. Still, the evidence said what it said. "I'll need your statement in writing," she said quietly. "Every detail." As she stood to leave, Delaney's voice stopped her. "Detective," he said, "he wasn't the only one." Monroe toned. "What do you mean?" "There were others. People high up. You start digging, you'll find more than you want." She frowned. "Names?" Delaney's voice cracked. He called it the Creek Code. Said it's how they cleaned the city, one body at a time. The next day, the chief held a press conference. His voice was steady, rehearsed. An officer-involved shooting took place last night near Peachtree Creek. Sergeant James Pierce was killed in the line of duty. Officer Mark Delaney is currently in custody pending investigation. The cameras flashed. The city buzzed. But Monroe wasn't listening to the chief. She was thinking about that flash drive, the one from Isaiah's box. She plugged it into her laptop again that night, this time slowing the video down frame by frame. At the 14-second mark, she froze. The cruiser's window reflection showed Pierce yelling. But behind him, in the back seat, Another figure. Not Delaney. Someone else. A tall silhouette in uniform. Broad shoulders. A distinct scar near his temple. She zoomed in. The pixels broke apart, but the scar was unmistakable. The chief. Her stomach turned. She replayed it again, slower. It was only a second, maybe less. But it was there. The chief. The same man now standing before cameras claiming he wanted justice. Monroe closed her laptop, heart pounding. If that video got out, it wouldn't just end careers. It would burn the department to the ground. Later that night, she drove through the rain to the Carter house. Jalen answered the door, eyes tired, his hands shaking from exhaustion. She handed him an envelope. "Your brother didn't drown," she said softly. "I'm sorry." His lip trembled, eyes glistening. "Then who?" "We're still working on that." He looked at her, confused by her tone. "You already know, don't you?" Monroe hesitated. "Justice takes time," she said, though even she didn't believe it. When she left, Jalen stood in the doorway watching the taillights fade into the dark, the envelope still sealed in his hand. Inside was Isaiah's photo, and the words "case ongoing" stamped across the back. Back at the precinct, Delaney sat through the night replaying his own memories, trying to remember where it all went wrong. He thought of Isaiah's voice, the fear in his eyes, of Pierce's hand on his shoulder afterward, whispering, "You didn't see nothing, Mark." And then he remembered something else. A phone. Isaiah had dropped it during the struggle. Pierce had picked it up and pocketed it. If that phone still existed, it could prove everything. Delaney stood, pressing the intercom button. "Detective Monroe," he said, "I know where it is." 2 hours later, they were back at the creek, flashlights cutting through the mist. The scene was taped off, the mud thick and dark. Delaney pointed toward the base of an old oak tree. He tossed it here that night. The text dug for several minutes before one called out. "Got something." It was cracked, waterlogged, but still intact. Monroe handed it to evidence control. "I want that dried, recovered, and decrypted by morning." Delaney watched in silence, eyes distant. "It won't change anything." She glanced at him. "It might." He shook his head. "Not for me. Not for the kid. But maybe for him." "For who?" Delaney's voice broke. "The one watching." That night, Monroe couldn't shake that phrase. She played the word "watching" over and over in her head as she drove home. Every case like this had eyes somewhere. Someone who saw everything but said nothing. When she reached her apartment, she found a small envelope taped to her door. No name. No return address. Inside was a single photo. Isaiah Carter standing beside a police cruiser, smiling. And behind him, barely visible, stood the chief, Pierce, and one other man. Delaney, scrawled on the back, "The creek keeps what you bury." By morning, the recovered phone yielded one video file. Timestamp, 10:20 p.m., the night Isaiah disappeared. The footage was dark, shaky. Isaiah's voice again, scared, whispering. "They said they'd help, but they ain't here to help." A flashlight beam cut across the lens. Voices, Pierce's unmistakable drawl, then another deeper voice saying, "Get him in the car." A hand reached toward the camera, then static. Monroe paused a frame right before the static hit. The arm that reached out had a sleeve patch, Atlanta PD Chief's Division. She stared at the screen. Everything Delaney said was true. Pierce hadn't acted alone. He'd followed orders. She called the chief's office. No answer. She called again. Still nothing. By the time she reached his house, his car was gone. She walked to the edge of the driveway. There, sitting on the concrete, was a single badge, gold, engraved, gleaming under the streetlight. The chief's badge. And beside it, a small photo of Isaiah Carter, edges burned. Delaney woke in his cell to the sound of keys rattling. Monroe stood outside, face pale, eyes haunted. "You were right," she said quietly, "about everything." He sat up. "Then it's over." She shook her head slowly. "No, it's just starting." That night, as thunder rolled through Atlanta, a news alert hit the airwaves. Police chief under investigation following death of Sergeant Pierce in missing civilian case. The city erupted in speculation. Everyone wanted answers. No one knew the full truth, except Monroe, and one more person. Jalen Carter sat in his bedroom, laptop open, playing a recovered video. Tears streamed down his face. At the end of the clip, as the screen glitched, a faint reflection appeared, a face he recognized from that night in the station. Officer Delaney. He closed the laptop slowly, whispering, "You laughed." Outside, the rain started again, heavy and unrelenting. Somewhere deep in the city, water carried away the last bit of Pierce's badge, the one the current hadn't yet claimed. And in the darkness, as lightning flashed over Peachtree Creek, something gold glinted beneath the surface. A badge, and a voice, faint, ghostly, whispering through the storm. The sun hadn't risen yet. Atlanta was caught between night and dawn, that dim gray silence before the city remembers to breathe again. Detective Alicia Monroe's tires whispered over wet asphalt as she pulled onto Creekwood Road, just outside the precinct. The mist hung low, soft as gilt. The call had come in just before 5 a.m. A hiker found a shallow grave near the South River, just a mile from where Marcus once lived. Alicia parked her car, hand trembling slightly on the gear shift. She didn't need to hear the words. She already knew. When she arrived at the creek, the scene was a quiet tragedy. 2 patrol cars, a coroner's van, the morning breeze carrying the smell of mud, copper, and rot. An officer lifted the yellow tape for her as she ducked under, boots sinking into the soft ground. "Detective Monroe," said the deputy coroner softly. It's a young male." Alicia looked down. The ground was torn open, a body wrapped in old tarpaulin rope, face unrecognizable but the shape still boyish. She knelt, brushing away dirt from the torn shirt pocket. Something glinted inside, a small silver chain with a cracked pendant. She recognized it instantly. "Marcus wore this," she whispered. The wind picked up, rustling through the reeds. And from somewhere beyond the creek, a memory surfaced, a voice from the precinct locker room. "Don't go near that river, Monroe. That's old business." Old business. Now it had a body. By the time she returned to the precinct, morning light was bleeding through the blinds. The station buzzed with routine chatter, phones, coffee, and lies. Officer Rick Daniels, the one who had laughed at Jamal when he first came in, was sitting at his desk, head low, staring at nothing. Alicia approached him quietly. "Daniels, need a word." He glanced up, eyes red, voice dry. "If it's about that grave, I already heard." She sat across from him, studying every twitch of his face. "You knew this was coming, didn't you?" He swallowed. "I didn't kill that boy." "No one said you did." He looked away, jaw tightening. "You think I didn't care? That I just laughed because I thought it was funny." "You did laugh," she said coldly. He slammed a hand on the table. "Because if I didn't laugh, IDV said something that'd get me fired. That case, that name, Marcus, it was buried long before that kid walked into my precinct." Alicia leaned in. "Buried by who?" He hesitated, eyes darting toward the chief's office door. Then back to her. "By the same people who built that new training facility out near the South River. The one under Chief Barnes's budget." Daniels nodded slowly. "That land wasn't just cheap. It was cursed." Alicia's mind spun. She pulled the case file from a bag, the one she'd reopened in secret, and laid Marcus's missing report beside a faded property development form. "Same coordinates. Same creek. Barnes knew," she whispered. "He signed off on this site 2 months after Marcus disappeared." Daniels rubbed his temples. "You don't get it. Marcus wasn't some random runaway. He saw something he shouldn't have. Cops from another precinct. Dirty deals near the river. He recorded it." Alicia froze. "Recorded?" Daniels nodded. "Rumor was he had it saved on a flash drive. Told a friend he'd take it to the papers. Next thing we knew, he was gone. Where's the friend now?" Daniels' silence was the only answer she needed. Later that evening, Alicia met Jamal again. He sat across from her in the same cold interview room as before. But this time, his eyes carried something heavier than grief. She placed a chain pendant on the table between them. He stared at it, lips trembling, hand covering his mouth. "That's Marcus's," he whispered. "They found him this morning," Alicia said softly. He nodded slowly, tears welling up. "I knew it. I knew they'd find him there." "How?" Jamal hesitated. Then, with shaking hands, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny, worn flash drive. This was in his drawer. "I didn't tell anyone." Alicia's breath caught. "Why give it to me now?" Because someone's been following me," he said. "Every night since I came here. Same car, same lights. I thought I was crazy. But last night, I saw the tag number." She leaned forward. "Whose car, Jamal?" His voice cracked. "Officer Daniels's." That night, rain rolled across the city. Alicia sat in her car outside the precinct, laptop open, flash drive loaded. She pressed play. Grainy footage flickered on the screen. The edge of a creek, the shimmer of flashlight beams. Voices. Laughter. And then a struggle. Someone begging. A boy's voice yelling, "I said I'll go to the press if you don't stop." A gunshot. A splash. Then silence. Alicia froze the frame. Zoomed in. Two figures stood near the water. One of them, unmistakable. Chief Barnes. Her pulse quickened. The man had been in uniform then. Younger, but same face. The second figure's voice was quieter, distorted by the wind. But when the camera turned just enough, Alicia's stomach dropped. The second man wasn't Barnes. It was Daniels. By midnight, Daniels was gone. His locker emptied, badge left on the table. Alicia entered the locker room, the smell of sweat and metal heavy in the air. She opened his locker carefully, hand steady despite the adrenaline burning through her veins. Inside was a single envelope, her name written in block letters. She opened it. Inside, a folded photograph of Marcus, alive, smiling beside Daniels in uniform, both at a community outreach event. On the back of the photo, a handwritten note. "He trusted me to protect him. I failed him. Don't trust anyone near the creek." Outside, thunder rolled low across the city. Alicia stared at the letter, the flash drive still warm in her hand. She thought about Jamal, the trembling boy with his brother's eyes, and about the men who had turned power into poison. Somewhere deep inside, she felt it. The creek wasn't done speaking. The next morning, she drove out to South River alone. Fog blanketed the water, the surface still as glass. She followed the trail down to the same spot the body had been found, and there she saw something glinting in the mud. She knelt. A police badge. Number 0723. She knew that number. It belonged to Chief Barnes. But as she lifted it, another shape moved behind her reflection in the water, a shadow stepping out from the trees. She turned, heart pounding. "Detective Monroe," a low voice said. It was Chief Barnes, his face unreadable in the gray light. "Seems you've been busy." The two stood in silence, only the sound of water and distance between them. Alicia's voice was calm, but cold. "Marcus Reed, you were there. I saw the footage." Barnes tilted his head. "You think that video means anything now? You think the city wants truth. Detective, truth doesn't pay taxes. Truth doesn't vote." He took a step closer. "Walk away. You're not ready to dig where this goes." Alicia's hand hovered near her holster. "Then you already know I'm not walking away." Barnes smiled faintly, a sad, knowing smile. "Then you'll end up like him." He turned and vanished into the fog before she could speak again. As the mist swallowed him, Alicia stood alone by the creek, holding a dead boy's chain in one hand and a fallen badge in the other. The water rippled softly, as if whispering back the same words she'd just heard. "Truth doesn't vote. Truth doesn't live here." She looked down at the badge. The engraved number shimmered under the weak light, and for a fleeting second, she thought she saw another reflection beside Hayes, a young boy smiling sadly before the current erased him. The creek had its own code, and it never forgot. The night rain felt like it was trying to wash Atlanta clean. But some stains don't wash off, not from concrete, not from conscience. Detective Alicia Monroe sat alone in her car outside the precinct, engine humming softly. The windshield was streaked with the ghostly reflections of blue and red lights bouncing from a patrol car parked across the lot. Her fingers traced the cold edge of the police badge she'd found by the creek. Chief Bonzi's badge, number 0723. And in her jacket pocket, something else. A small locker key with the number 14B carved faintly into its metal. It had been attached to the badge when she picked it up from the mud. That key didn't belong to Bonzi's locker. It belonged to Daniels's. Inside the precinct, the halls were nearly empty, just the hum of the vending machine, the echo of her own boots. Alicia made her way down to the locker room, lights flickering overhead. The scent of metal, sweat, and bleach clung to the air like old guilt. She stopped in front of locker 14B. The padlock was missing. A chill crawled down her neck. She inserted the key. It clicked easily. Inside was a small metal box, and beneath it, a folded note. She unfolded the paper. It read, "If you're reading this, I'm gone. You were right about everything. Bonds wasn't alone that night, but you won't find him in any report. Look for the second badge. The creek was just a cover. The rot started inside. Forgive me. I didn't mean for the boy to die. I tried to stop them. Daniels." Alicia's heart sank. She opened the box. Inside was a flash drive, identical to the first one Jamal gave her, and a small plastic evidence tag, #4178A. But the handwriting on it wasn't police script. It was Jamal's. Hours later, Alicia played the new footage in her office. The timestamp read 2 weeks before Marcus's disappearance. The video opened in the precinct's parking lot. Marcus, barely 17, stood near a chain-link fence, talking to someone out of frame. His voice was quiet but urgent. "I have proof, man. They're using the training site to move evidence. Guns, drugs, stuff from old cases. I saw Chief Bonds and myself." Then the other voice spoke, shaky, nervous. "Daniels, Marcus, you don't understand what you're stepping into. I don't care. My brother deserved to grow up in a city that isn't built on lies." Then, headlights. A second car pulled into frame. A figure stepped out. Broad shoulders, calm stride, shadow falling across both of them. "Bonds," he said something. The MIC didn't catch it, but Daniel stepped back like he'd been struck. Marcus turned to run. The camera jolted, and the screen went black. Alicia leaned back, pulse racing. This wasn't a conspiracy anymore. It was a murder inside the badge. She downloaded the file and backed it up twice. Then she called Internal Affairs. But when the operator answered, the line cut out, static, then silence. The power flickered. Then she heard it. Footsteps in the hallway outside her office. Subscribe, like and comment. Let's hear from you. Alicia reached for her gun. The footsteps stopped. The door creaked open. "Detective Monroe," a voice said. She froze. Chief Bond stood in the doorway, trench coat soaked from the rain, eyes unreadable. "Long night?" he asked calmly. She kept her hand near the holster. "You've been busy erasing evidence." He smirked faintly. "And you've been busy collecting it. You killed Marcus Reed." Bonds tilted his head. "Killed? No. I protected this department from a scandal that would have burned the city. A boy made a mistake, and I contained it." "Contained?" Her voice shook with anger. "You buried him in a creek and built a training center on top of him." He took a slow step inside. "You think the city cares who's under the foundation? The mayor wanted numbers, not ghosts." She raised her gun. "Don't move." He stopped, looked at her, almost pitying. "You won't shoot me, Alicia. You still believe in the badge." She steadied her aim. "Not yours." He chuckled softly. "You think justice lives here? It doesn't. It visits sometimes, then gets run out of town. Then maybe I'll escort it back." At that moment, another voice came from the doorway, firm, trembling. "Put the gun down, Chief." It was Jamal. He was holding a phone, recording everything. Bonds turned slowly, sighing. "Son, you don't know what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing," Jamal said, his voice breaking. "You took my brother. You laughed while my family begged for answers." Bonds took a small step toward him. "Don't make the same mistake he did." Alicia moved to block him. "You're done, Chief. It's over." But then, a gunshot. Loud. Deafening. Jamal screamed. Barnes staggered, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping through his uniform. Alicia's gun smoked in her hand. He fell back against the wall, gasping. "You think this changes anything?" he muttered. "They'll still call me a hero tomorrow." His eyes locked with Hayes. "Calm, even now. Check the locker above mine," he whispered. "Then tell me you still believe in justice." Then his head slumped, and the light in his eyes went out. Rain battered the windows as paramedics arrived. The precinct filled with flashing lights, sirens, reporters. But none of that mattered, because when Alicia opened the locker above Barnes's, 15B, she found a single item inside, a manila envelope labeled evidence, "Do not destroy." Inside were stacks of photographs. Every one of them showed officers, some still active, some retired, exchanging cash and crates under the same bridge near the South River. In every frame, Barnes was there, and beside him, another face Alicia hadn't seen before, her own former training partner, Detective Roy Carver. By dawn, the footage Jamal recorded was already spreading online. News anchors called it the Creek cover-up. Protests ignited across Atlanta. The mayor's office issued statements. The department went silent. Alicia sat at a desk, staring at the letter from Daniels again. "Forgive me. I didn't mean for the boy to die." She thought about Marcus, his voice full of defiance on that video, believing justice could still live in his city. And she thought about Jamal, standing in that same room, shaking, still believing his brother's death meant something. That afternoon, she went back to the creek one last time. The sun was low, painting the water gold. The air smelled of earth and ghosts. She knelt at the edge where Marcus had been found, holding his silver chain in her hand. Then she tossed a police badge, Barnes's badge, into the current. It sank slowly, the engraved numbers glinting once before vanishing beneath the murky surface. Jamal stood beside her, silent. "Do you think it's over?" he asked quietly. Alicia didn't answer. She just watched the ripples fade. Finally, she said, "Justice doesn't disappear. It just hides until someone's brave enough to dig it up again." That night, she returned home, exhausted. But as she unlocked her door, she saw something on the floor. An envelope. No name. No stamp. Inside, a single photograph. The creek, taken at dawn, and standing by the water, reflected faintly in the mist, a silhouette of a young man, smiling. The same smile from Marcus's photo. Alicia's breath caught. She looked closer, heart racing. But before she could turn the photo over, a drop of water smeared the ink. The face vanished. She stared at it for a long time, then whispered, "Rest now, Marcus." Outside, the wind moved through the trees, soft, steady, almost like a voice. And somewhere beneath the South River, the badge she'd thrown away glinted once more in the dark current, before the mud took it, and the city forgot again. But the truth never drowned. It just waited. Subscribe, like and comment. Let's hear from you.